Hello everyone and welcome. This year has finally seen the public recognition of the immense difficulties faced by people of color in nearly every aspect of society at nearly every level. And perhaps society is finally starting to realize that things must change. But what does change look like and who's responsible for it? Our presenter ran a version of this session last year addressing this very issue and question, entitled Inclusion and How to Build a Longer Table. And if you know him, then you won't be surprised to know that he has revised and updated this work for this year to be even more cogent and impactful. But for those who don't know him, let me introduce Jackie Summers. He is an acclaimed author, seasoned public speaker, and serial entrepreneur. Also, he is the founder of JackFromBrooklyn and the creator of the award-winning Sorrel liqueur. He's a native New Yorker and was recently featured in Esquire magazine for being the only Black person in America to hold a license to make liqueur in 2012. Ranked among the world's 100 most influential bar industry figures by Drinks International magazine in 2019 and named the 2019 award winner for Best Food Essay by the Association of Food Journalists, Summer has written for everyone from the James Beard Foundation to Plate, Wine Enthusiast, and Edible Brooklyn. Everyone else knows him as a passionate advocate for people doing right and helping those who ask for help. He is a polymath, a paladin, and a friend to many, as well as an inspiration to all. Welcome, Jackie Summers.
Welcome. Good to see you. How you feeling today?
I'm really good, thank you.
I'm excited about this. All right, should we get started?
Yeah, take it away.
I'll start off by doing the screen share. And here we go. Oh, we're gonna have to edit that. Here we go. So, as was said, my name is Jackie Summers. I've spent years teaching a seminar called How to Build a Longer Table. I am no longer giving that seminar. Let's go back to the beginning. About a decade ago, I had a cancer scare. My doctor found a tumor the size of a golf ball inside my spine, and he said, "You are probably gonna die. And if you live, there's a 50% chance of paralysis, but you've only got a 5% chance of living through this. You should organize your affairs accordingly." Short version of that story is I lived, but it will adjust your perspective. Given the new outlook, I thought to myself, what do I really want to do with my life? And the thing I wanted to do more than anything else in the world was day drink. I want to be around cool people in the middle of the day, in the middle of the week, talking about stuff that matters, having good food and good cocktails, and I wanted to monetize it. I thought to myself, who's gonna pay me to drink professionally? I know what I'll do. I'll launch a liquor brand. How hard can it be? Turns out, it's close to impossible if you do not have a liquor background. I don't have a liquor background. Or if you don't have $1 million. I don't have $1 million. What I did have was a recipe that I had perfected in my kitchen. I'm of Caribbean descent, and every Caribbean family makes a version of something called sorrel. I thought my version was pretty good and decided I was going to be the first person to ever market this professionally. Turns out mine is the best on the planet. It's literally the best version of this beverage on the planet. I released it in 2012. It came out to just rave reviews. 95 points ultimate experience competition. 5 stars Paul Packel Spirit Journal. 5+ Simon Difford's Guide. The New York Times calls it Christmas in a bottle. It could not have done better commercially. It could not have gotten better reviews. What I did not know, and what I could not have known at the time, was when I got my license to make liquor, when I got my DSP in 2012, I was the only Black person in America with a license to make liquor. Handful of brewmasters, handful of winemakers, handful of people who either had import licenses or contract bottling situations. But an actual DSP holder, I was Tigger. I was only one. I need you to think about that for a second. This is the part of the story where I tell the joke. Who's been to a zoo? Most hands go up if you've seen at a zoo in person a lion, a tiger, or a bear. When I launched my liquor brand in 2012, nobody had seen a Black liquor brand owner before. That was new. So every time I walked into a restaurant, every time I walked into a bar, every time I met with distributors, every time I taught a sales team, every time I sat in a boardroom, it was more likely that the people I was talking to had lived experience in the presence of lions and tigers and bears. They knew how to conduct themselves in the presence of a lion, a tiger, or a bear. They had no idea what to do in the presence of a Black man. That was the year I thought to myself, it is in my best interests and the best interests of my industry to start to teach about racism. Because if you haven't noticed, racism is a real thing, and it is very, very real in the liquor industry. And the interesting part about teaching racism is you can't tell people, don't be racist. That is insufficient. You have to teach people how to be actively anti-racist, because the system that they inhabit and that we exist in is racist by default. So unless you're actively anti-racist, you are passively contributing to a system that oppresses some. And when I started to teach that, I had this thought in my head. I said, I'm talking to people who don't think of themselves as racist and tell them to be anti-racist. I don't think of myself as sexist, but am I actually anti-sexist? And the answer was no. The answer was, while I might not have been directly oppressing women, I was passively benefiting from a system, patriarchy, which oppressed women and put me forward. So I figured out through teaching others about anti-racism that I needed to work on my anti-sexism. And once that happens, the whole world opens up. Once you see that you have been passively oppressive, you can really look at the whole scale of privilege and oppression, whether or not it's being male, whether or not it's being born to money, whether or not it's identifying with the gender that you're assigned at birth. There's a whole scale of access where you can actually identify where I have privilege and where I have oppression. I'm a Black man, so I've definitely got some oppression, but I'm a able-bodied, straight male. I've got plenty of privilege. Based on that, I thought to myself, the best thing that I can try to do is to teach people who have that it is in their best interest to extend to those who don't. I sincerely believed that if I just explained diversity and equity and inclusion, people would change. So I came with facts. I talked about exactly what defined diversity. I talked about the difference between diversity and equity. I've talked about how both of those things differed from inclusion. I came with facts where I could actually show that our industry, hospitality, is a microcosm of society at large in that marginalized people suffer disproportionately. I came with facts that showed women still get paid less than men. Undeniable facts. I came with facts that showed it is it is it is financially responsible to diversify. You literally make more money if you have a diverse management team. I thought that the facts would make a difference. Yeah, I was wrong. I mean, don't get me wrong, the seminar was well received and people walked out of it very thoughtful, but the end result was something like this. The end result was something like Lincoln getting an invite to Peanuts Thanksgiving, sitting on one side of the table by himself. And it was as likely that Lincoln was sitting at the table by himself as it was the dog in the chef's hat also got invited. There was an equal chance. If you're at the table, sure, dog with the chef's hat, who's actually sitting with people. I wanted to think I was making a difference, and I wasn't. And then COVID-19 happened. And COVID overthrew all of the tables. And the first question people started to ask is, well, how do we get back to normal? And my thought was, why would I want to return to normal? The tables that were overturned were never meant for somebody like me. Why would I help reestablish that? Why would I help reestablish tables that were designed to marginalize people? And can we say that that's true? Absolutely. We have proof right now. The person who taught Jack Daniels how to make whiskey was a slave. We have proof right now, at least in the US, cocktail culture is owed to Black people. We created cocktail culture in this country the same way we created food culture. This is a David Wondrich article that appeared in the Daily Beast. We can prove that not just cocktail culture, but dive bar culture, again, created by Black people. David Wondrich, cocktail's greatest living historian, again in the Daily Beast. So if we literally taught this country how to make booze and taught this country how to fix booze and taught this country how to serve booze, why, although so few of us who own anything, why are there so few Black brand owners? Why are there so few Black bar owners? And if you're living in a world, as we are now, where the tables have been overturned, should you help put things back the way they were? Because what I figured out is if you are waiting for a seat at a table where you were always unwelcome, you might as well be waiting for a bus that's left the station. Teaching people to build a longer table, It's a great slogan, right? I mean, it sounds so good. It sounds so inclusive. Build a longer table so everyone can have a little bit. But I had got a I got a James Baldwin quote stuck in my head last year, and it readjusted my perspective on everything. The quote is, your slogan always hides your truth. Build a longer table is a great slogan, but it hides the truth. The truth is that table was never designed for you. And the best thing that you can do if you actually want to have a seat at the table, stop waiting. Stop waiting for an invitation where you are not welcome and build your own table. What does that look like? How does one build your own table? What are the steps? How does one go about it? These are all really good questions. In order to answer them, we're going to profile 3 actual icons in our industry. We're going to talk about Lynette Marrero, we're going to talk about Yannick Benjamin, and we're going to talk about Samara B. Rivers. All pioneers, all entrepreneurs, all people who saw a need and built their own tables. Let us begin with Lynette. And just to start off, like, look at her credentials. Before she started Speed Rack, she was just always been this incredible force of nature. There's literally nothing that she could not do in our industry if she chose to. But what she is best known for, of course, is Speed Rack. And Speed Rack, for those who don't know it, is a women's only bartending competition where they compete to see who can make the best drinks in the least time. And the people who compete not only build community, but the people who win build careers. So let's ask some questions. If Lynette were here, she would tell us what drove you to create your platform. Again, with Ivy Mix, she was working. She saw a need to create her own stage because in a world, again, that really owes it so much to women, women were not being featured. They were not center stage. So they literally made their own stage to compete and show off their own talents. I want to make it a point to say that they wanted to try to recognize people who were already out there doing things. The obstacles that they had to overcome, obviously, the biggest obstacle is always who's paying for this. Lynette, through the work that she'd already done for years, was able to get brand sponsorships. She talked to friends and family first, but as the idea grew, brands lined up behind her. This has especially been true as they've gone from local to national to global. They have made sure to have everyone in the same room as they have grown this. How did they grow the platform? They grew it through people that they knew. It was word of mouth. It was reaching out to folks who were already in their networks and seeing who they could expand to and seeing who they could expand to. Now that they're worldwide, they're seeing what else that they can do to help women in hospitality. I don't know if I mentioned this, but the entire point, all of the proceeds to Speed Rack, all the proceeds go towards women's breast cancer research. So it's a doubly good cause. It is not only helping women who are already in the industry doing great things have a platform, it's actually helping women who are suffering from breast cancer to make progress, and helping women helps everybody. Just so we can be clear about that. Helping women helps everyone. What advice, if she could give, would Lynette tell you? Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is your strength. It sounds like the antithesis of what a dominant male culture brings or teaches, but I think it's incredibly valuable. Let's go to our next highlight. Yannick Benjamin. I just want to say he's one of my favorite people on the planet. He's, again, this force of nature. He was one of the best sommeliers in the country before he lost the use of his legs in an accident 15 years ago. And he had an opportunity, looking at the path in front of him, to make life as easy as he could for himself, or to make life easier for people who didn't have his resources. And he's chosen to pursue a course of life where he's using his resources to help people who don't have his advantages. With this in mind, he founded something called Wine on Wheels, which literally helps people, primarily in the New York City area, who are suffering from some form of disability, to have greater access to facilities that will let them live their very best possible lives. He came up with this idea while he was in his own rehab. So he's got this passion for wine. He's got this passion for helping people. He's figured out how to combine them both into a single thing, which advances both agendas. Obstacles to overcome. Yannick is too much of a gentleman to really go into how he deals with obstacles. I've, much like Lynette, much like Samara, I've rarely met anyone who refuses to let things stand in his way as much as Yannick does. Here's a good example. I did give a seminar called Build Along a Table a couple of years ago, and Yannick was one of my panelists. Got to the venue 20 minutes ahead so we could do a dry run. The venue hadn't provided a ramp for him to get on stage. They knew what we were talking about. They'd known for months. And I'm trying to have a conversation about how people are marginalized, and they literally marginalized one of my panelists by not making sure he had access to get onto the stage. He was a gentleman about it. The rest of us were utterly livid at the situation. But he helps people navigate some of the tough issues around disabilities, like insurance. Growing the platform, they consider themselves a mom and pop organization, but really they're all over the country and all over the world. They try to make things better for everyone who they come in contact with, but they have grown their networks to the people that they know, and the folks that those folks know. So it always stays close and it always stays personal. Advice that he would give to people that are building their own platforms. First thing is, you have to know that there are going to be challenges, physically, emotionally. So you have to make sure that you're getting involved in something that you care enough to do every day, especially when you are challenged, whether it's a physical challenge or an emotional challenge. If you don't really care about this thing, you're not going to do it on the tough days. You also have to think about how what you do affects others. There are always people that are going to not just observe what you do and benefit from your example, but benefit from your work. So if you're not thinking about how what you do impacts others, give that some consideration. It's always an us thing. It's very ever rarely a me or an I thing. Samara Rivers is another goddess. She has done so much in so little time. And again, there's something remarkable about the way she perceives things. Samara runs Black Bourbon Society. And as somebody like me who likes to drink, she didn't see marketing dollars being spent on her segment. And for the record, Black people drink a lot. In a general sense, marginalized people drink. Women drink. The queer community drinks. Immigrants drink. It's one of the ways we deal with being marginalized. So Samara sees from a consumer perspective that her needs and the needs of her community aren't being served. So she literally created the platform, Black Bourbon Society, to make sure the brands addressed her and her community on her terms. Obstacles to overcome? I'm on record of saying this and I'm going to say it again. The only thing harder than being a Black person in this country is being a Black woman in this country, because you're not only dealing with racism, you're dealing with racism and sexism. It's a lot. It's a lot to only ever see yourself as the only person that looks like you in the room. You aren't taught growing up that you should be that person. We were given survival tools that never told us, make your own table. This is new. We were taught to fit in and not to raise a fuss. And there's a lot of fuss to be made in the day and age we're living in. So she had to actually come to terms with her own confidence and command a room when she walked in. And believe me, she does. How do you grow the platform? Again, you start off with who you know. You start off with social media. They tell two friends, they tell two friends, and so on, and so on, and so on. And the other thing that's really important here is you just don't advocate for yourself, you advocate for others. As long as you are trying to help other people, they have a reason to continue to try to help you. Advice you would give to people looking to build their own table? Do it. Stop waiting. Again, this is a different advice than we're used to getting. We're used to being told to sit, to plan, to figure out all the details. You can spend your whole life figuring that stuff out. It won't help if you don't actually take some action. Do it. Never take no. My best friend always says, never take no from someone who's not qualified to say yes. And don't be afraid to be the first one. It's hard, but it's always, always, always going to benefit more than just you. What do we learn that these three amazing people all have in common? Lynette, Yannick, and Samara. The first thing that they all did was they identified a problem. This is the part where I say, unless you are solving a problem, you are creating a problem. Sorrel worked for one big reason. It solved problems. You could put an ounce of Sorrel into any cocktail, gin, bourbon, vodka, mezcal, and come up with a brand new cocktail that could not be replicated by putting in any other substitute. It literally didn't work with anything else. Sorrel solved problems for people. Black Bourbon Society solves problems for people. Speed Rack solves a problem for people. Wheeling Forward solves problems. If what you are doing actually is fixing something that's already existing and you can see that thing, you're a step ahead. You've got the advantage. But if you are just going to do something that works for you, you are going to have a much harder time of establishing whatever it is that you're trying to do. Nobody wants a table just for one. The second thing here that they all did, you got to embrace a passion. This sounds like it's an easy thing to say, but there are going to be days when you do not feel like doing this. No matter how much you think you love it now, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard in ways you can't even imagine yet. And in the days when you do not feel like getting out of bed, you've got to remember why you do this. Otherwise, it's not going to work. They all picked something that they felt passionately about. And on the worst days, it's still their choice. And the best part about it is, you get to make your living your way. This is a saying I've had for many, many years. The best way to earn a living is to create a life. And the best way to, since we're on the topic, the best way to predict trends, create trends. Focus on community. Again, three completely different individuals, three completely different platforms, but they all do have this one thing. They didn't focus on themselves. They all thought about what would help the most people around them. So Lynette is helping women bartenders everywhere and women everywhere, and so by proxy, people everywhere with Speed Rack. Yannick is helping disabled people. Samara is helping people who are overlooked because they're Black by the liquor brands. None of them thought in terms of I and me. All of them thought in terms of us and we. Us and we can solve problems. I and me is in it by himself. And again, no one's going to sit at the table for one. This is also something that they did. Utilize your resources. I get the same from Yannick. He says this to me all the time, and it sticks with me. Start where you are. Do what you can with what you have. You might not have everything you need to begin with. Who do you know? You want to build your own table. Do you know somebody with a hammer? Do you know somebody who's built a table before? Do you know somebody who can lend you some wood? Do you know someone who can design chairs for you? All of this is useful. Again, and it ties into the next point, growing your own network. Well, that's not the next point, but this is maybe the most important point of the entire thing. All of them did this. OPE and OPM. When I was 15, I read a book about entrepreneurs called Rhinoceros Success, written by a multimillionaire. His big thing was, he said, if you want to succeed, you need to be like a rhinoceros. Keep charging, don't let anything get in your way. It was an interesting gimmick, but the thing that he said that stuck with me, OPE and OPM, once you have your big idea, once you know how you're going to serve the community, once you've got your passion, you need these two things: other people's experience and other people's money. The single most valuable skill that you can acquire while you are trying to build your own table is convincing other people why they would want to sit at your table, why they would want to contribute their resources, their time, their energy, their access, their checkbook to your big idea. Again, this is why it's so important to focus on something that is community oriented and something that actually benefits somebody beside yourself. If you can convince other people why your table should exist, you will get help from resources close and resources you can't even imagine yet. This is a particular favorite saying of mine. You got to be unreasonable if you're going to try to do this. There's nothing reasonable about thinking that the world needs your table. Do it anyway. There's nothing reasonable about thinking that I was going to be the first Black person to hold a liquor license less than a decade ago. There's nothing reasonable about thinking that you're going to create an international platform for women to compete where it's literally only women. Nothing reasonable about that. There's nothing reasonable about what any of these people started off doing. If someone tells you that you're not being reasonable, you are being bamboozled. Reasonable people don't change the world. So whatever you think your idea is, think bigger. And then once you have the bigger picture, think bigger again. Be willing to do things and see things in a way nobody has ever done before. The tables that exist or existed, they may come back in some form, but in an ideal world that we're building together, build your own ideal table. Figure out what you're passionate about. Figure out what will get you out of bed every single day. Figure out who you know that's got a hammer. Teach yourself how to build a table. Build a table from the ground up that's designed to include everybody instead of trying to fit in on the table where you were never welcome. You have an opportunity now that hasn't existed in this particular form in our lifetimes. Stop waiting for someone to invite you to a table where you're not welcome. Go build your own. Boom, I think we're done.
Thank you so much, Jackie. That was awesome. So important and just more relevant than ever and so inspirational. I'm touched. Thank you. Thank you so much again.